I taste metal and ozone on my tongue, though I replaced my organic mouth with blessed augmetics 73 years ago. The air in the Sanctum Imperialis should not have flavor. It should not have texture. But today, it does. Today, something is wrong. Or perhaps, after 10,000 years, something is finally right. My name is biologist Deltrian Voke, and I have stood this vigil for longer than most mortals live. My hands, 3 biological, 2 mechanical, shake as I observe the data cascading across my optical feeds. Numbers that have remained flat for millennia, the vital signatures of a corpse sustained by machinery and faith, are rising. Slowly, impossibly, but rising. The golden throne dominates the chamber like a mountain of guilt and agony. Cables thick as transit tunnels writhe across its surface, pulsing with energies that would atomize a lesser being. At its heart, entombed in mechanisms older than memory, sits the master of mankind. The emperor, the anathema, the carrion lord if you believe the whispers of heretics before they burn. I have seen his face every day for decades, that withered, skeletal visage pressed against the throne's life support systems, skin like ancient parchment stretched over bone, eyes that have not opened since the heresy ended and the galaxy broke. I know every hollow of his sunken cheeks, every ridge of his exposed skull where flesh has worn away across 10,000 years of suffering. I know when something changes. The biometric readings scroll across my vision in sacred high Gothic, rendered in the red and gold of the Mechanicus. Neural activity, 0.003% above baseline. Synaptic response, detectable. Cerebral blood flow, increased by 0.001 milliliters per second. Numbers so small they should be meaningless. Numbers that are, in fact, the most significant data recorded in imperial history since the emperor took his place upon the throne. His brain is firing. Synapses that have been dark for 100 centuries are lighting up like stars being born in the void. I want to look away. Every instinct in my partially mechanized body screams that I am witnessing something forbidden, something that should remain veiled even from the eyes of the faithful. But I cannot stop watching. My augmetic eyes zoom and refocus, capturing every fluctuation, every infinitesimal change in the Emperor's condition. The smell of burning incense intensifies. The custodians maintain braziers throughout the sanctum, filling the air with smoke that is supposed to honor the Emperor and mask the smell of the machinery's heat and the faint, terrible scent of decay that no amount of preservation can fully eliminate. Today, the incense smells different, sharper, like the moment before lightning strikes. A custodian stands 3 meters to my left, golden armor catching the light of 1,000 candles. He has not moved in 6 hours. They are statues given life, these golden giants, watchers who have stood guard over their lord for longer than civilizations endure. I wonder if he sees what I see. I wonder if he feels what I feel. This awful, crawling sensation that reality itself is holding its breath. Another spike in the data. Stronger this time. Neural patterns that resemble, no, that are, the early stages of consciousness. The Emperor's mind, that vast and terrible consciousness that has been scattered across the warp for 10 millennia, guiding the Astronomicon, battling demons in the Immaterium, holding together an empire by sheer psychic will. It is gathering itself, consolidating, returning. I have spent my entire adult life studying death and preservation, the boundary between life and the machine-sustained mockery of it. I know what a coma looks like. I know what brain death looks like. I know what it looks like when a body is kept technically alive while the mind has long since fled. This is none of those things. This is awakening. My primary heart beats faster. My secondary heart, installed to improve my efficiency during long vigils, joins the rhythm. Sweat. Actual biological sweat, one of the few organic functions I have retained. Beads on the flesh of my forehead. I wipe it away with a trembling hand and stare at the moisture on my fingers as though I have never seen perspiration before. The golden throne hums. It has always hummed, a deep vibration that resonates in your bones if you stand close enough, a sound like reality straining against itself. But the pitch is changing, rising. The machinery is working harder, compensating for something, adjusting to a load it has not had to bear in recorded memory. I force myself to look at his face again, that skull-like visage, barely human anymore, worn down by millennia of agony. And as I watch, as my senses record and my mind reels, I see something that stops my breath in my chest. His finger moves. Not much. A twitch, a tremor, the smallest contraction of the tendons in his right hand where it rests against the throne's armrest. But I have stared at that hand for years, and I know its every angle, every position, and it has never, in all my time, moved. Until now. The custodian's head turns. A minute movement, but I catch it. He saw it too. Our eyes meet. His human and ancient, mine augmented and wide with horror and wonder. In that moment, I understand that we are both thinking the same impossible thought. After 10,000 years of death in life, after 100 centuries of silent suffering, after an age of humanity praying for a miracle they have learned not to expect, the Emperor of mankind is waking up, and neither of us knows whether we should rejoice or despair. The custodian steps closer to me, his massive form casting a shadow that swallows the light. His voice, when it comes, is deeper than thunder and soft as a whisper. You will record everything, biologists, every reading, every fluctuation. Nothing is too small to document. I nod, unable to speak, and he turns away, taking up his position once more. His golden armor gleams, but I know what lies beneath that perfection. Vigilance, eternal, exhausting vigilance, and fear. Not for themselves. Custodians do not fear death, but fear for what their failure would mean. The truth of the Golden Throne is not what the Imperium teaches its children. In the hive cities and agri-worlds, on forge planets and shrine worlds across the galaxy, they show images of the Emperor sitting in majesty upon a golden seat of power, radiant and eternal, merely resting while he guides humanity through the darkness. They speak of him as a god in meditation, as a saint in eternal prayer. They do not speak of the machinery. The throne is a relic from the dark age of technology, a device so ancient and complex that even the greatest minds of the Adeptus Mechanicus can barely comprehend its function. It was never meant to be a life support system. The Emperor intended it to be a gateway, a doorway into the webway that would free humanity from dependence on warp travel. He meant to give mankind the same technology the Eldar once used to make us masters of our own destiny. Then Magnus the Red, in his arrogance, shattered that dream. The psychic shockwave of his warning about Horus broke through the Emperor's carefully constructed wards and tore the Webway project apart. Demons poured through. The Emperor had to abandon his great work to hold the breach closed, to prevent an endless tide of warp spawn from flooding into the Imperial Palace itself. And then came the final battle. Horus, the betrayal, the duel aboard the War Master's flagship, the Emperor's body broken by the hand of his most beloved son, Rogel Dawn carrying him back to Terra, his life hanging by the thinnest thread. The throne became his prison and his responsibility. He sits there still, 10,000 years later, holding shut a door that can never be closed, sustaining a light in the warp that keeps humanity from drowning in darkness. And every day, the machinery fails a little more. I see the evidence everywhere, coolant lines patched with prayers and blessed seals, power conduits held together by faith and fused metal, systems that should have redundancies operating on margins so thin that a single fluctuation could trigger cascade failure. The tech priests of Mars send their best to maintain the throne, and we work miracles with ritual and desperation. But we are not repairing it. We are merely delaying its death, and we fuel it with souls. Every day the black ships arrive from across the Imperium, their holds filled with psychers. Most are weak, barely able to light a candle with their minds. Some are stronger, dangerous, requiring suppression and restraint. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica sorts them, trains some, condemns others, and for the throne they select approximately 1,000. 1,000 human beings, every single day, fed into the machinery. Their psychic essence drained to sustain the Emperor's failing body and power the Astronomicon, that great lighthouse in the warp that allows humanity's ships to navigate between the stars. They scream as the throne consumes them. I have heard it. The sound carries through the walls despite all attempts at soundproofing. A psychic cry that echoes in the minds of everyone who serves in the sanctum. 365,000 souls per year. 3,650,000 per decade. 365 million per millennium. For 10,000 years. The math is simple. The horror is incalculable. This is the price of the Imperium's survival. This is what we do not speak of in polite company. What the ecclesiarchy buries under layers of dogma and necessity. We burn human souls like fuel to keep our God alive, and through him, to keep the light burning that holds our civilization together. If the Emperor dies, the Astronomicon fails. If the Astronomicon fails, warp travel becomes impossible for all but the most skilled or suicidal navigators. The Imperium would fragment instantly into isolated systems, each world alone in the dark, cut off from supply lines, reinforcements, trade, communication. Chaos would pick apart the pieces. The Tyranids would feast on world after world. The Orcs would rampage unchecked. Humanity would die not in a single apocalyptic moment, but slowly, over centuries, drowning in darkness and silence. And there is worse. The Emperor's psychic presence is what keeps the webway breach sealed. If he dies, if his will falters for even a moment, that gate will burst open and demons will pour through the wound directly into the heart of terror. The birthplace of humanity would become a new eye of terror, a warp rift devouring the cradle of mankind and spreading outward to consume everything. This is what the custodians guard against. This is why they stand their eternal vigil. 10,000 golden warriors who never sleep, never rest, never falter. They are not waiting for the Emperor to heal. They are waiting for him to die, and preparing to sell their lives dearly when that day comes. To buy humanity a few more moments to evacuate, to pray, to scream. We have balanced on the edge of this abyss for 100 centuries. And now, the Emperor is waking. I stare at the data streaming across my vision and feel ice in my veins. If he wakes, does he leave the throne? Can he leave it without triggering the collapse we have feared for 10,000 years? Will awakening give him the strength to finally close the webway breach? Or will consciousness only make him aware of his suffering, causing him to let go at last? The custodian was right to make me record everything, because what I am witnessing is not simply a miracle. It may be the end of everything we know. The first reports arrive within hours, and they come from everywhere at once. I am still in the sanctum, still recording the Emperor's vital signs as they continue their impossible climb, when a custodian receives a Vox transmission. His expression does not change. Custodians are masters of control, but I see his hand tighten on his guardian spear, He listens for 37 seconds, then turns to face the throne with something in his eyes I have never seen before. Uncertainty. Astropathic stations across 3 segmentums are reporting anomalous activity, he says, his voice carefully neutral. Coordinated psychic disturbances. The same vision, received by thousands of sanctioned psychers simultaneously. My mechadendrites twitch with nervous energy. What vision? A golden figure, he says slowly, rising from a throne of bones. The words hang in the air like smoke. I feel my organic heart skip a beat, then race to compensate. The Emperor's neural activity spikes again on my display, as if in response to being spoken of. 0.007% above baseline now. The number means nothing to most. It means everything to me. It has begun, I whisper. The custodian does not ask what I mean. He knows. Across the Imperium, in the cold minds of astropaths locked in their sanctuaries, in the fever dreams of unsanctioned psychers hiding in the underhives, in the troubled sleep of navigators aboard ships cutting through the warp, the vision comes. They see him, not as the propaganda depicts, not as the ecclesiarchy preaches. They see the truth, a figure of gold and light, wrapped in machines, impaled by needles of brass and cables of silver, a skeleton barely covered in flesh, a skull with sunken eyes that have been closed for longer than empires last. And in the dream, in the vision that spreads like wildfire through the psychic network of humanity, those eyes open. Some of the psychers who receive this vision wake screaming. Their handlers find them clawing at their faces, babbling about the weight of divinity, the terrible burden of a god's gaze finally turning back toward the material universe. 3 astropaths on the fortress world of Cadia's successor stations tear out their own eyes rather than see what they have seen. 2 more on distant Ultramar burn themselves out completely, their minds simply ceasing to function, overloaded by the psychic pressure of that golden attention. But others weep with joy. On the shrine world of Ophelia 7, a choir of 200 sanctioned psychers begins to sing simultaneously, without prompting, without rehearsal. The hymn they sing has no words, only a melody of pure psychic resonance that causes everyone who hears it to fall to their knees. The priests call it a miracle. The Inquisition calls it dangerous. On Armageddon, still scarred from decades of war, a preacher in the ruins of Hive Tartarus suddenly stops mid-sermon and stares into space. His congregation watches as tears stream down his weathered face. He moves, the preacher whispers. The Emperor moves. I can feel him breathing. After all this time, he breathes. The congregation erupts, some in celebration, some in terror. Fighting breaks out. 17 people die before the Arbites restore order. The preacher is taken into custody by the Inquisition. He is never seen again. This is happening everywhere. Reports flood into Terra from Segmentum Solar, Pacificus, Obscurus, Ultima, Tempestus. The Vox networks strain under the volume. Astropathic choirs burn through their members trying to relay all the messages. The psychic pressure in the warp is building, a wave propagating outward from Terra, like ripples from a stone cast into still water. Except the stone is the emperor of mankind, and the water is the realm of souls and daemons. The High Lords of Terra convene in emergency session in the Chamber of Governance, deep beneath the surface of the throne world. 12 of the most powerful humans in the galaxy gather around a table that has witnessed 10,000 years of decisions, and for the first time in living memory, none of them know what to say. The master of the Administratum, a withered man whose age is measured in centuries thanks to Juvenat treatments, finally breaks the silence. If this is true, if the Emperor is truly awakening, we must prepare for immediate and catastrophic systemic disruption. The psychological impact alone could fracture the Imperium. The psychological impact. The ecclesiarch's voice is sharp with fury. You speak of the return of our God as though it were a supply chain problem. This is the answer to 10,000 years of prayer. Or the end of 10,000 years of stability, the master of the Assassinorum says quietly. The Imperium functions because the Emperor is constant, silent, unchanging, a symbol that can be interpreted to support whatever doctrine is necessary. If he wakes, if he speaks. She lets the implication hang. If he speaks, the Fabricator General's mechanical voice rasps. He may contradict everything we have built in his name. The room falls silent at this heresy spoken aloud. The inquisitorial representative, her face hidden behind a silver mask, leans forward. The visions are spreading too quickly to contain. We have executed 743 witnesses in the past 6 hours alone, and the reports continue to multiply. We cannot kill everyone who dreams of the Emperor. We would have to purge entire worlds. Then perhaps, the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes says from where he stands in the shadows, we should stop trying to hide what is happening and start preparing for it instead. All eyes turn to him. He steps into the light, golden armor gleaming. The Emperor is waking, he says simply. This is happening whether we wish it or not, whether we are ready or not, whether it destroys everything or saves it. Our duty now is not to suppress the truth. Our duty is to ensure that humanity survives whatever comes next. In the Sanctum Imperialis, I watch another spike in neural activity cross my senses. The Emperor's brain is firing patterns I have only seen in textbooks, in theoretical models of what a mind like his might look like if it were conscious. The warp trembles. Demons in the immaterium shriek and flee from something they cannot name. And across 1,000,000 worlds, humanity feels a presence they have prayed to for 100 generations finally, terribly, beginning to pay attention. The Emperor is stirring, and the galaxy will never be the same. The Captain General stands alone in the Chamber of Reflection, a small room adjacent to the sanctum where custodians come when they need to center themselves. He has not needed this chamber in 273 years. He does not remove his helmet. Instead, he stares at his gauntleted hands and remembers the last time he stood in the Emperor's presence when his lord was truly awake. It was during the Webway War, before the final betrayal. He remembers the Emperor's voice, not spoken aloud, but felt directly in the mind, a pressure that was both terrible and magnificent. He remembers the certainty that radiated from his master, the absolute conviction that humanity could be saved, that the galaxy could be conquered, that a better future was not merely possible but inevitable. He remembers believing in that certainty with every fiber of his being. That was 10,000 years ago. He has stood vigil over the Emperor's corpse-like form for 3 centuries since his awakening from stasis. 300 years of watching a desiccated face that never moves, never speaks, never shows any sign of the being that once walked among his primarchs and spoke of dreams that could reshape reality. Until today. The Captain General had been standing his post when he saw it. Not the data that the biologist monitors with his instruments and sensors. Something simpler, something that cut through him like a power sword through flesh. The Emperor's hand had closed. Not much, just a slight contraction of the fingers, a tightening that suggested not random muscle spasm, but intention, control, will. The hand of someone who was aware. He should have felt joy. He should have felt vindication, relief, triumph. Instead, what flooded through him in that moment was something he has not experienced since he was a mortal child. Before the enhancement, before the transformation into something more than human. Fear. The Captain General has killed demons with his bare hands. He has stood in the webway and fought the endless tide of chaos for years without rest. He has watched brother custodians die, has seen the Imperium teeter on the edge of annihilation 1,000 times, has stared into the face of extinction without flinching. But now, watching the Emperor's fingers curl, he is afraid. What will wake up? The question eats at him like acid. The Emperor who fell at the end of the heresy was already wounded beyond measure. Horus had nearly destroyed him, body and soul. The Emperor who was placed upon the golden throne was a broken thing, held together by will and necessity. That was 10,000 years ago. What happens to a mind that spends 10 millennia in agony? A mind that must simultaneously hold shut a warp rift, power the Astronomicon, and endure the daily sacrifice of 1,000 screaming souls fed into machinery to keep his body from failing? What does that do to consciousness, to sanity, to humanity? The Captain General thinks of the Emperor he knew, the scientist, the warrior, the visionary who rejected godhood and sought to elevate mankind through reason and conquest. That being believed in the imperial truth, in a future where humanity would outgrow superstition and claim the galaxy through strength of will and mastery of science. But that future died in the fires of the heresy, and in its place grew something else. A cult, an empire built not on reason but on faith. The very thing the Emperor despised has become the foundation of everything he created. 10,000 years of worship, of prayer, of blind devotion to a silent God who never asked for it and would have forbidden it if he could. What does that worship do to a being of psychic power? The Emperor was already the most powerful psyker in human history, but now he has been marinated in the faith of quadrillions, worshipped across 1,000,000 worlds, prayed to by countless billions who have lived and died, never knowing him as anything but a god. The warp reflects belief. It shapes reality according to thought and emotion. The chaos gods exist because sentient beings give them form through their fears and desires. What form has humanity's worship given the Emperor? The Captain General fears he already knows the answer. He has felt the change in the warp over the centuries. The Emperor's presence there has grown, evolved, become something vast and terrible, and utterly unlike the man who once walked the halls of the imperial palace. There is something gestating in the immaterium, fed by faith and suffering, a god thing that wears the Emperor's face but may no longer contain his soul. If that thing wakes up, if it incarnates fully into the material universe, what will it do? Will it recognize the Imperium it has sustained? Will it love humanity as the Emperor once did? Or will it see only subjects to be ruled, prayers to be answered, worship to be enforced? Will it be their savior or their tyrant? A soft chime indicates another presence requesting entry to the chamber. The Captain General straightens, pushing his doubts down into the depths of his mind where they cannot interfere with duty. Enter. Another custodian steps through the door, his armor bearing the marks of 10,000 years of service. Tribune Valentius, one of the oldest of their order, a warrior who fought at the Emperor's side during the Unification Wars. You feel it too, Valentius says. It is not a question. The Captain General nods slowly. I do not know what will emerge from that throne. Neither do I, Valentius admits, and the confession costs him something. I have been remembering the webway, the Emperor we knew would work until his hands bled to save a single human life. He built an empire to protect humanity, not to dominate it. He was ruthless, yes, brutal when necessary, but there was compassion there, love even, though he rarely showed it. That was before, the Captain General says quietly. Yes, before. Valentius stares at nothing for a long moment. Before the betrayal, before the throne, before 10,000 years of torture and the worship he never wanted. I wonder if compassion can survive that. I wonder if love can endure that much pain." They stand in silence, two of the Emperor's finest warriors, his chosen guardians, and they share a truth they can never speak aloud beyond these walls. They are afraid their god has become something monstrous. "What do we do?" the Captain General finally asks. "We do what we have always done," Valentius says, his voice hardening into resolve. "We stand vigil. We protect him, and we prepare for whatever comes. Whether he wakes as our master or our doom, we are his custodians. That does not change." The Captain General nods, drawing strength from the certainty in his brother's words. But as he returns to the sanctum, as he takes up his position beside the golden throne and watches the Emperor's chest rise and fall with shallow breaths that grow deeper by the hour, he cannot banish the fear. The Emperor is waking, and when his eyes open, they will see an Imperium that bears almost no resemblance to the dream he fought for. The Captain General wonders if that awakened gaze will be one of recognition or disappointment, or worse, indifference. In the Basilica of the Sacred Heart on Terra, Cardinal Benedar Roscoe kneels before the altar of eternal devotion and realizes that for the first time in his 147 years of service to the God Emperor, he does not know what to pray for. The basilica rises around him like a mountain of faith made stone, its vaulted ceilings disappearing into shadows far above, its walls covered in murals depicting the Emperor in glory, leading the Great Crusade, battling Horus, ascending to the Golden Throne in radiant majesty. 10,000 years of artistic interpretation, each generation adding its own vision of divinity to the Emperor's image, until the man beneath has been buried under layers of sanctified myth. Roscoe has built his entire life on those myths. He has preached them to billions. He has sent crusades to die for them. He has burned heretics who questioned them. The Emperor is eternal. The Emperor is unchanging. The Emperor watches over humanity from his golden throne, silent but omnipresent, distant but all-knowing. That silence has been the foundation of the ecclesiarchy's power. A silent God requires interpreters, priests to speak on his behalf, cardinals to define his will, a vast apparatus of faith that has grown over 10 millennia into one of the most powerful institutions in the Imperium. If the Emperor wakes, if he speaks, what need will there be for interpreters? The thought is treason. It is also impossible to ignore. Roscoe rises from his knees, his aged joints protesting despite the juvenile treatments that have kept him functional long past his natural span. Around him, the basilica echoes with the prayers of thousands of the faithful, their voices rising and falling in hymns that have been sung unchanged for centuries. They pray for the Emperor's blessing. They pray for his guidance. They pray for his awakening. Do they understand what they are asking for? He makes his way through the basilica's vast halls to the Cardinal's Council chamber, where an emergency conclave has been called. The room is circular, its walls lined with stained glass depicting the saints and martyrs of the imperial cult. 37 cardinals sit in high-backed thrones arranged in a perfect circle, their robes heavy with gold and jewels, their faces weathered by centuries of service and politics. The ecclesiarch himself presides, his ancient face unreadable beneath his towering mitre. He waits until all are assembled, then speaks in a voice that resonates with both authority and carefully concealed uncertainty. Brothers and sisters in faith, you know why we are gathered. The Emperor stirs. The signs are undeniable. Across the Imperium, the faithful report visions, miracles, and psychic disturbances, all pointing to a single truth. Our God may soon wake. A murmur runs through the assembly. Roscoe watches faces carefully. Some show joy. Others show carefully neutral expressions that hide deeper calculations. We must discuss, the ecclesiarch continues. what the awakening of the Emperor would mean for the imperial cult and for the spiritual guidance of humanity. Cardinal Vestra speaks first, her voice sharp with barely contained excitement. It means the fulfillment of prophecy. 10,000 years we have prayed for this moment. The Emperor returning to lead us personally would usher in a new golden age. We should be preparing celebrations across every world, calling the faithful to witness the greatest miracle in human history. A miracle that could destroy us, Cardinal Morthrin counters. His voice is cold, measured. The Emperor rejected worship. The imperial truth forbade religion. If he wakes and speaks against the ecclesiarchy, if he denounces the very faith that has sustained humanity through the long night, what then? Do we tell quadrillions of believers that everything they have been taught is false? The chamber erupts. Half the cardinals surge to their feet, shouting accusations of heresy and cowardice. The other half call for calm and reason. Roscoe remains seated, watching the fracture deepen. The ecclesiarch raises his hand, and slowly, silence returns. Cardinal Morthrin raises a legitimate concern, however uncomfortable. We must consider all possibilities. There is another possibility, Cardinal Severus says quietly from the shadows. He is an old man, even by the standards of this chamber. His face more skull than flesh, his eyes burning with a fervor that makes even his fellow cardinals uneasy. What if the Emperor wakes not as the man who rejected godhood, but as the god he has become? 10,000 years of worship has changed him. The warp reflects faith. We have prayed to a god, and perhaps through our faith, we have made him into one. Perhaps he will wake not to reject our devotion, but to accept it. That is the hope, Vestra says eagerly, that our faith has transformed him into something greater than he was, something that transcends his old prejudices against religion, or something that is no longer human at all, Roscoe finds himself saying, surprised by his own voice breaking the moment. All eyes turn to him. He swallows and continues, "Forgive me, but we speak of transformation as though it were simple. A being that has spent 10,000 years absorbing the worship of quadrillions, that has become something vast enough to hold a warp rift closed and power the Astronomicon. Is that still the Emperor who walked among his Primarchs, or is it something else wearing his shape?" "Heresy," someone hisses. "Truth," Roscoe replies, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "And we must face it. What if the Emperor wakes and his first words are commands we cannot accept? What if he demands we dismantle the ecclesiarchy? What if he calls for the execution of every priest and cardinal who has spread faith in his name? What if—" He pauses, knowing this will damn him but unable to stop. What if he wakes as something so alien, so transformed by suffering and worship, that he no longer cares about humanity at all? The silence that follows is absolute. Finally, Cardinal Morthrin speaks again, his voice barely above a whisper. "There is another question we must ask ourselves, though it damns us even to think it. Are we certain we want the Emperor to wake? The Imperium has functioned for 10,000 years with a silent god. Power is balanced, systems work, humanity survives. An awakened Emperor would change everything, destroy carefully built structures, disrupt the order that has kept us alive through the long night. You speak of maintaining our power," Vestra accuses. "I speak of maintaining the Imperium," Morthrin shoots back. "The Emperor is more valuable as a symbol than as an active ruler. Symbols can be interpreted. Living beings make demands, issue orders that may be disastrous, shatter faith that has taken millennia to build. The ecclesiarch's face is ashen. You suggest we should prevent his awakening." "I suggest nothing," Morthrin says carefully. "I merely observe that change on this scale could fracture everything we have built. and I ask whether we have the courage to face that possibility honestly. Roscoe looks around, the chamber at the faces of the most powerful religious leaders in human history, and he sees fear in every pair of eyes. They have prayed for their God's return for 100 centuries, and now that it may actually happen, they are terrified, because a God who can speak is a God who can judge, and they all know what he might find them guilty of. While the cardinals argue in their basilica, deep beneath the surface of terror, in the Adeptus Astra Telepathica's most secure sanctum, astropath transcendent Callista Vaughn sits in a chamber lined with psychic dampeners and blessed silver. She is one of the most powerful sanctioned psychers alive, her mind strong enough to send messages across segmentums, to touch the thoughts of distant astropaths light years away and relay the commands of the High Lords to the far reaches of the Imperium. She is also, at this moment, screaming. The vision hits her without warning, bypassing every ward, every protection, every psychic barrier that decades of training and enhancement have built into her consciousness. It is not a message sent to her. It is not even directed at her specifically. It is simply too vast to be contained, and she is sensitive enough to receive it whether she wills it or not. She sees the warp, not as she has seen it countless times before in her duties, that roiling sea of madness and color where demons dance and ships navigate between stars. She sees it as it truly is, a dimension of pure thought and emotion, where the feelings of sentient beings create form and substance, where belief becomes reality and gods are born from the collective unconscious of entire species. And at the center of it all, she sees him, the Emperor, but not as he sits on the golden throne, not as the desiccated corpse thing that biologists Voke monitors with his instruments. She sees what he has become in the warp, what 10,000 years of worship and sacrifice and faith has built in the realm of souls. He is vast, incomprehensibly vast, a figure of golden light so bright it makes the eye of terror look dim by comparison, so massive that entire demon legions flee before him like insects before a flame. But he is still trapped, still constrained, still bound to his physical form by the golden throne and the weight of his responsibilities. He is gestating, growing, evolving, fed by every prayer spoken in his name, every sacrifice made for his glory, every moment of faith from quadrillions of human beings across 1,000,000 worlds. The worship he never wanted has been shaping him, sculpting him, transforming him into something he never intended to become. A god. Not a god in the way the ecclesiarchy imagines. Benevolent, loving, guiding. Callista sees the truth of what belief has made him. 10,000 years of prayers for protection have made him into protection incarnate. 10,000 years of prayers for order in a chaotic universe have made him into order itself. 10,000 years of prayers for dominion over humanity's enemies have made him into dominion absolute. She sees his true form in the warp, and it is terrible. He stands as tall as mountains, clad in armor that is not metal but solidified will, holding a sword that is not a weapon but the concept of judgment made manifest. His face is still human, still recognizable as the emperor who once walked among his people. But his eyes are stars, burning with an intensity that could reduce entire worlds to ash with a glance. Around him, reality bends. The warp itself reorganizes in his presence, chaos forced into rigid patterns, madness compressed into structure. She sees demon hordes that have existed since the birth of Slanesh simply cease to be as his attention falls upon them, their existence incompatible with the absolute order he emanates. And she understands with horrifying clarity what he is becoming. The fifth chaos god. Not of blood like Khorne, not of change like Tzeentch, not of plague like Nurgle, not of excess like Slanesh. He is becoming the god of order, of control, of dominion, of rigid, unyielding, absolute authority. The Chaos Gods are born from the darkest aspects of sentient emotion: rage, ambition, despair, pleasure taken to extremes that destroy the soul. But order taken to its absolute extreme is just as inhuman, just as monstrous. Total order means no freedom. Complete control means no choice. Absolute dominion means every being in the universe reduced to a cog in an infinite machine, all serving a single will without question, without deviation, without the possibility of being anything other than what they are commanded to be. Humanity has prayed for 10,000 years to be saved from chaos, and through their prayers, they have created something powerful enough to oppose the dark gods. But the cost is everything that makes them human. Callista sees the future if he awakens fully. She sees him rising from the golden throne not as a man, but as a god incarnate, his consciousness spreading across the galaxy like a psychic wave. She sees every human psyche suddenly connected directly to his will, their minds subsumed into his vast intelligence, becoming extensions of his consciousness rather than individuals. She sees the Astronomicon transform from a lighthouse into a chain, binding every human soul to him whether they wish it or not. She sees order, perfect, terrible order, the Imperium functioning with mechanical precision, because every being within it has become a puppet dancing on golden strings. No corruption because there is no freedom to become corrupt. No heresy because there is no ability to think thoughts he does not approve. No rebellion because there is no self left to rebel. Humanity will survive. They will be protected. They will be guided. They will conquer the galaxy and push back every Xenos threat and demonic incursion. But they will no longer be human. They will be cells in the body of a god, functioning without consciousness, without will, without anything that makes existence worth living. And in the warp, the Chaos Gods watch this new power growing, and for the first time in eons, they know fear, because he is strong enough to challenge them, strong enough perhaps to destroy them. But in doing so, he will become just like them, an absolute force of nature, inhuman and unstoppable, caring for humanity only as a farmer cares for crops to be harvested. The vision releases Callista, and she collapses, blood streaming from her eyes and nose and ears. Her attendants rush to her side, but she pushes them away with trembling hands and forces herself to her feet. This knowledge must reach the High Lords. This truth must be known. She staggers to the Vox terminal and opens a direct channel to the Chamber of Governance, her voice raw and broken but clear enough. This is Astropath Transcendent Vaughn, Priority Alpha. I have intelligence regarding the Emperor's awakening. Critical. Immediate. Within minutes, she stands before the assembled High Lords, her robes stained with blood, her face pale as death. They listen in absolute silence as she describes what she has seen. When she finishes, no one speaks for a long moment. Finally, the Master of the Administratum asks the question they are all thinking. If this is true, are we saving humanity or enslaving it? No one has an answer. The fracture begins in the Inquisition, which is fitting. They are humanity's watchdogs, trained to see threats everywhere, conditioned to trust nothing and question everything. When Astropath Vaughn's vision is disseminated through the highest levels of imperial authority, encrypted, classified, but impossible to fully contain, it spreads among the Inquisitors like plague through an underhive. Within 72 hours, the Ordos are at war with themselves. Inquisitor Lord Golan Severax of the Ordo Malleus convenes an emergency gathering of his most trusted colleagues in a fortress monastery on the edge of the Segmentum Solar. 17 Inquisitors answer his call, and when he tells them what Vaughn has seen, the room explodes into shouting. We must allow the awakening, Inquisitor Katerina Greyfax declares, her augmetic eye glowing with fervor. The Emperor ascending as a god of order is our only hope against the ruinous powers. Yes, the cost is high, but extinction is higher. We will trade freedom for survival because without survival, freedom means nothing. You would make us slaves, Inquisitor Covenant roars back, slamming his fist on the table. The Emperor fought to free humanity from the chains of old night, from superstition and the tyranny of gods, and you would turn him into exactly what he despised. Better we all die free than live as puppets. Philosophical luxury, Greyfax snaps. Spoken by someone who has never watched an entire sector fall to chaos. I have seen what happens when order collapses. I have walked through hive cities where children are born with tentacles and citizens worship demons because there is no one strong enough to enforce sanity. The Emperor as a god of absolute order would end that horror forever. At the cost of everything that makes us human, Covenant insists, we would become him. Extensions of his will. There would be no art that he does not approve, no thought that he does not sanction, no dream that does not serve his purpose. That is not salvation. That is extinction by another name. Severax watches the fracture deepen and knows it is already too late to stop it. The Inquisition is splitting into factions, and where the Inquisition goes, the rest of the Imperium will follow. The Resurrectionists emerge first, led by Greyfax and those who believe the Emperor's awakening must be facilitated at any cost. They begin redirecting resources, sending agents to Terra to ensure nothing interferes with the process. Some advocate increasing the psychic sacrifice, feeding more power into the Golden Throne to accelerate the awakening. They see themselves as midwives to a new age, ushering in the birth of humanity's salvation. The preservationists coalesce around those like Covenant, who argue that the Emperor must remain on the throne, that his current state, tortured but functional, is preferable to the alternative. They work to maintain the status quo, to find ways to stabilize the throne's failing mechanisms, to prevent the awakening from reaching completion. They believe they are saving humanity from a fate worse than death. But there are others. The Puritans, led by conservative members of the ecclesiarchy and militant factions within the Adeptus Ministorum, claim that humanity is not worthy of the Emperor's awakening. They call for massive purges, for the cleansing of corruption across the Imperium, arguing that only when humanity has proven itself pure can they dare to face their returning God. Entire worlds are declared unworthy and subjected to brutal penitence crusades. And then there are the nihilists, inquisitors and officials who have seen Vahn's vision and concluded that there is no good outcome, that the Emperor's awakening will mean the end of the Imperium regardless of what form it takes. Some retreat into fatalism and debauchery, spending the final days in excess. Others turn to desperate measures, seeking any alternative, even forbidden ones, to prevent or survive what is coming. The conflict spreads beyond the Inquisition within weeks. Space Marine chapters declare their positions. The Ultramarines, ever pragmatic, side with the preservationists, arguing for stability and careful consideration. The Black Templars, zealous and faithful, join the Resurrectionists, welcoming their god's return with fanatic joy. The Space Wolves remain suspicious, declaring they will serve the Emperor who was a man and warrior, not some warp-spawn god, regardless of its power. On the world of Gathis Prime, Cardinal Ultha Voss proclaims that the Emperor's awakening is a test of faith. We must prove ourselves worthy, he preaches to millions gathered in the planet's great cathedral. We must purge the unclean, purify the corrupt, show our God that we deserve his return. Within days, Gathis Prime descends into a purge that kills 3 million people accused of insufficient faith. On the Forge world of Metallica, The fabricator locum makes a different calculation. He seals the planet, closes all warp routes in and out, and declares that Metallica will remain neutral in the coming crisis. The Omnissiah's will is beyond our comprehension. He transmits on all channels. We will wait and serve, regardless of outcome. 17 other Forge worlds follow his example within the month, but the most devastating fracture occurs in the Imperial Guard. On the war-torn world of Arcanos, General Castor Remnev receives word of the factions and the crisis on Terra. He gathers his officers and speaks words that will be repeated on 1,000 worlds before the month is out. I joined the Guard to serve the Emperor of Mankind, he says, his voice steady and hard. A man who led the Great Crusade. A warrior who unified Terra. A leader who rejected godhood and superstition. If what awakens on Terra is a god, if what rises is some warp entity wearing his face, then I will not serve it. The Emperor I swore my oath to would not want slaves. He would want soldiers, humans, free humans who chose to fight for a better future. The general raises his bolt pistol. I will not kneel to a god. I will only serve a man. 17 regiments on Arcanos declare for Remnev. By week's end, 43 worlds in that sector alone are in open revolt, claiming they will not serve a deity, only their true emperor, the man who was, not the god he is becoming. They paint their vehicles and armor with the symbol of the old imperial truth, the lightning bolt that represented humanity's rejection of faith and superstition. The irony is devastating. The very thing humanity has prayed for, begged for, across 10,000 years is tearing them apart. On Terra, in the Sanctum Imperialis, biologist Voke watches the Emperor's neural activity continue to climb, while Vox reports flood in from across the galaxy describing civil war, purges, revolts, and massacres, all in the name of preparing for or preventing the Emperor's return. The Captain General of the Custodes stands beside him, his golden armor reflecting the light of the Golden Throne, and speaks quietly. We fought for 10,000 years to keep him alive, and now that he is waking, we are destroying ourselves over what he might become. He pauses, then adds with bitter understanding, perhaps this is our final test, not whether we can survive his death, but whether we can survive his return. Voke says nothing. There is nothing to say. The Imperium is fracturing, and the Emperor is still waking, and no one knows if anything will be left when he finally opens his eyes. The galaxy burns, but in the Sanctum Imperialis, there is only silence. The Captain General stands 3 meters from the Golden Throne, closer than he has stood in decades. This close, he can see every detail of the Emperor's face. The parchment skin stretched tight over bone, the sunken cheeks, the network of tubes and cables that penetrate flesh at 1,000 points. He can see the shallow rise and fall of that skeletal chest, each breath a labor that has continued for 10,000 years. And he can see the eyes. They are opening, not quickly, not dramatically, but undeniably, inexorably, like the turning of a celestial body or the slow collapse of a star. The eyelids flutter, trembling with effort, or perhaps with the weight of awareness returning after an age of darkness. Behind them, the Captain General catches glimpses of light, golden, terrible, beautiful light that should not exist in human eyes. Biologist Vogue stands at his instrument panels, his mechadendrites twitching with agitation as he monitors readings that climb higher with each passing hour. Neural activity at 12.6% of theoretical maximum, he reports, his voice tight with stress. Psychic output increasing exponentially. The Throne's systems are compensating, but barely. At this rate, full consciousness will be achieved within 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days until the Emperor of Mankind wakes fully and whatever he has become is finally revealed. The Captain General should be preparing, coordinating with the other custodians, ensuring security, planning for every contingency. Instead, he stands here because he has been summoned by the High Lords to receive a choice he never wanted. The messenger arrived an hour ago, a hooded figure bearing the seal of the Master of the Administratum, and 3 other High Lords who dare not reveal their identities. The message was brief and devastating. The Captain General has the authority to alter the psychic sacrifice rate. As commander of the Custodian Guard and protector of the Emperor, he has override codes to the mechanisms that regulate how many psychers are fed into the throne each day. It is a failsafe, implemented millennia ago in case of emergency, a way to increase power if the Astronomicon falters, or decrease it if the machinery threatens to overload. He can increase the sacrifice, feed more souls into the dying God machine, flood the Emperor with psychic energy that might overwhelm the awakening, force his consciousness back down into dormancy. The preservationists believe it could delay the awakening indefinitely, perhaps even reverse it, buying the Imperium more time to prepare, or to fracture completely in civil war. Or he can reduce the sacrifice, decrease the flow of souls, allow the Emperor's consciousness to rise more quickly, to finally break free from the torment that has defined his existence since the heresy ended. The resurrectionists claim this is mercy, that humanity owes their Lord the dignity of awakening, regardless of the consequences. The choice is his alone. The High Lords dare not make it themselves. They will not bear the weight of this decision. So they have placed it upon the shoulders of a warrior who has served the Emperor longer than some civilizations have existed. "What would you want?" the Captain General whispers, staring at that slowly opening eye. "If you could speak, if you could tell me what to do, what would you command?" The Emperor does not answer. He has not spoken in 10,000 years. Perhaps he cannot. Perhaps he will not. Perhaps the being that wakes will no longer remember how to speak in words that humans can understand. The Captain General thinks of the vision that Astropath Vaughn described, the god of order gestating in the warp, fed by faith and suffering, powerful enough to challenge chaos itself, but inhuman in that power. He thinks of what the Emperor might say if he wakes and sees what the Imperium has become. The fanaticism, the brutality, the worship he despised, now the foundation of everything. Would he be grateful for 10,000 years of torment endured to keep humanity alive? Or would he be furious that humanity chose to keep him chained to a dying throne rather than let him die with dignity? To increase the sacrifice is to condemn the Emperor to more suffering, potentially endless suffering. 10,000 years becomes 20, 30, 100,000. An eternity of agony for a being who gave everything to protect mankind. The Captain General has watched brothers die in battle, has granted them mercy kills when their wounds were too severe to survive. Is this not the same? To keep someone alive against their will, in endless pain, for the sake of those who benefit from their suffering. But to decrease the sacrifice is to risk everything. If the Emperor wakes as the god that Vaughn described, if he rises as an entity of absolute order that strips away human free will, then the Captain General will have personally facilitated the extinction of humanity's soul. Every person who loses themselves to the Emperor's divine will, every mind subsumed into his vast consciousness, every dream crushed under the weight of enforced perfection, all of it will be on his hands. This is the cruelest choice. Not because both options are bad, but because both could be justified. Both are acts of love in their way. Love for the Emperor, wanting to free him from suffering. Love for humanity, wanting to preserve their freedom and identity. How do you choose between mercy for one and survival for billions? How do you weigh 10,000 years of agony against the potential loss of everything that makes humanity human? The Captain General looks at the other occupants of the chamber. A dozen custodians stand at their posts, golden and silent, waiting for his decision. Tech priests monitor their instruments, recording data that will never be fully understood. 3 silent sisters stand in the shadows, their psychic null fields creating dead zones in the warp, barriers against demonic intrusion. They are all waiting for him to decide. He thinks of the emperor he knew, the one who walked among his warriors during the Unification Wars and the Great Crusade. That being had made the hardest choices imaginable, had condemned entire worlds to death to save the species, had sacrificed everything, his sons, his dreams, his humanity, for the survival of mankind. What would that emperor want? To be kept alive indefinitely in torment, or to wake, whatever the cost, and face the consequences of 10,000 years of worship and warfare? The Captain General realizes with sudden, terrible clarity that there is no right answer. Only choices, each with their own horror, each with their own cost. He is not choosing between good and evil. He is choosing between one kind of tragedy and another. His hand moves to the control panel that Voke has reluctantly activated. The biometric scanner recognizes him, waiting for his command. Increase the sacrifice and bind the Emperor to eternal suffering. Decrease it and potentially unleash a god who may devour humanity's soul. The Emperor's eye opens a fraction wider. The golden light behind it intensifies. In that light, the Captain General thinks he sees something. Recognition, awareness, judgment. He makes his choice. His fingers move across the controls and seals the fate of the Imperium. The Captain General's hand leaves the control panel, and for 3 heartbeats, nothing happens. Then the Emperor's eyes open fully. The psychic shockwave that follows is not sound or light or force. It is awareness itself, expanding outward at a speed that makes light seem stationary. It crosses the solar system in an instant, punches through the warp like a spear through water, and detonates across the galaxy in a wave of consciousness so vast that every human being with even the smallest spark of psychic sensitivity feels it like a hammer blow to the soul. On distant Ultramar, astropaths scream and clutch their heads. On the war-torn fields of Armageddon, Imperial guardsmen fall to their knees as something vast and terrible and achingly familiar brushes against their minds. Aboard vessels in the warp, navigators stare into the immaterium and see the currents themselves reorganizing, reality bending around a presence that has been sleeping and is now, terrifyingly, awake. In the Sanctum Imperialis, biologist Voke's instruments explode in cascades of sparks and shattered glass. The readings have gone beyond maximum, beyond measurable, beyond anything his sensors were designed to record. He stumbles backward, his augmetic eyes overloading with data that his brain cannot process. The custodians stand firm, but the Captain General sees several of them trembling, not from fear, though fear is certainly present, but from the sheer psychic pressure emanating from the Golden Throne. The air itself feels heavy, thick, as though reality is struggling to contain what is happening. The Emperor rises, not quickly, not with dramatic flourish, but with the inevitability of a sun ascending over a horizon. The cables and tubes that have imprisoned him for 10,000 years tear free, some breaking, others simply dissolving as though his awakening rejects their existence. Golden ichor, not blood, but something that might once have been blood, spills from 1,000 puncture wounds and evaporates before it touches the ground. He stands. The motion takes 30 seconds that feel like 30 years. His body unfolds from the throne, joints that have been locked in place for 100 centuries moving with agonizing slowness. He is tall, taller than the Captain General remembers, as though suffering has somehow added to his height, rather than diminishing it. His form is skeletal, barely more than bone and stringy muscle wrapped in skin like ancient parchment. But his eyes are stars. They burn with golden fire, not metaphorically but literally. Flames that lick from the corners, trailing smoke that smells of incense and ozone and something else. Something that might be called holiness, if holiness had a scent. When those eyes sweep across the chamber, the Captain General feels his soul laid bare, every thought and memory and secret fear exposed to a gaze that sees through flesh and bone and into the core of what makes him himself. The Astronomicon does not fail. The great psychic lighthouse that guides humanity's ships through the warp does not blink out, plunging the Imperium into darkness as so many feared. Instead, it transforms. Across the galaxy, navigators in their sanctuaries aboard thousands of vessels watch in awe and terror as the Astronomicon's light changes. It had been a steady beacon, constant and reassuring, a fixed point in the madness of the warp. Now it pulses with a new rhythm, brighter and harsher, almost demanding. It no longer simply guides, it commands. It reaches out into the warp and imposes structure on chaos, forces order onto the formless nightmare of the immaterium through sheer power of will. And in that transformed light, they feel him. The Emperor, not distant, not abstract, but present and aware and watching. Watching everything, everyone. The Emperor takes his first step away from the Golden Throne in 10,000 years. His foot, bare, skeletal, the bones visible through translucent skin, touches the floor, and where it lands, golden fire spreads outward in concentric circles, burning nothing but illuminating everything. The light reveals truths. Hidden mechanisms in the throne room become visible. The Silent Sisters' faces, normally hidden behind helms, seem transparent, their souls visible as dim absences in the psychic landscape. He turns slowly, taking in the sanctum, the custodians, the watching tech priests. His gaze is not cruel, but it is absolute. The gaze of a being that sees everything as it truly is, stripped of pretense and illusion. And then he sees beyond the chamber. His consciousness expands, flowing outward through the palace, through Terra, through the solar system, through the galaxy itself. In an instant that is also an eternity, the Emperor perceives his Imperium. All of it. Every world, every system, every ship in the void, every human being struggling to survive in the darkness. He sees the Ecclesiarchy's cathedrals built in his name, gilded monuments to worship he never wanted. He sees the Inquisition burning heretics and innocents alike, unable or unwilling to distinguish between the two. He sees the Imperial Guard throwing waves of soldiers into meat grinders, spending lives like currency because lives are cheaper than ammunition. He sees the hive cities where billions live in squalor, where children are born into darkness and die having never seen the sun, where humanity clings to existence through sheer desperate will. He sees the fanaticism, the cruelty, the corruption that has woven itself through every institution, every organization, every level of the society he built. He sees what 10,000 years of survival at any cost has done to the species he loved. He sees what they have become in his name, and the Emperor of mankind weeps. The tears are not water. They are golden fire, streaming from those burning eyes, running down his skeletal face in rivulets of liquid flame. Where they fall, the ground hisses and smokes, but the tears do not burn from heat. They burn from truth, from the weight of perfect understanding, from the grief of a father who has woken to find his children twisted, corrupted, broken by the very systems meant to protect them. The Captain General watches those burning tears fall and feels his heart's breaking, because he understands. The Emperor is not weeping from joy at his return. He is not weeping from the pain of 10,000 years of agony. He is weeping from disappointment. The Emperor stands there, newly awakened, more powerful than he has ever been, ascended into something vast and terrible, a god whether he wishes it or not, and surveys the imperium of man, the civilization he built, the dream he sacrificed everything for, the species he loves with an intensity that could shatter worlds. And it is not what he wanted, not what he fought for, not what he suffered for. The Imperium endures, yes. Humanity survives, yes. But at what cost? They have become the very thing he tried to save them from. Superstitious, fanatical, trapped in endless cycles of violence and faith. The imperial truth is dead, buried under 10,000 years of worship. The dream of a rational, enlightened humanity reaching for the stars has become a nightmare of blind faith and desperate prayer. He saved them, and in doing so, destroyed everything he hoped they would become. The golden tears continue to fall, burning small holes in the ancient floor of the sanctum. And, in those tears, the Captain General sees the terrible truth. The Emperor is awake. He is a god. He is more powerful than he has ever been. And he wishes he was not. The weeping stops after an eternity that lasts only minutes. The golden tears cease flowing, leaving scorched marks on the floor like burn scars on reality itself. The Emperor straightens, his skeletal frame drawing up to its full, impossible height. And when he speaks, it is not with words but with pure thought that resonates in every mind present. I see what you have become. The voice, if it can be called a voice, carries no anger, no rage, only a terrible, crushing weight of understanding and sorrow. Biologies. Voke falls to his knees, his augmetic legs giving out not from mechanical failure, but from the sheer psychic pressure of being addressed directly by a god. I see what you had to become to survive. The Emperor turns, his burning gaze sweeping across the sanctum one final time. And then, he moves. Not walking. His body has been too damaged for normal locomotion, but gliding, carried forward by will alone, his skeletal feet barely touching the ground. The custodians part before him like wheat before wind, and he passes through the great doors of the sanctum, leaving the golden throne behind. Empty. Silent. After 10,000 years of screaming machinery and the death cries of 1,000 psychers per day, the throne sits vacant and still. That silence is somehow louder than any sound Voke has ever heard. The Emperor does not destroy the Imperium. Over the days and weeks that follow, he remakes it. His consciousness spreads through the warp like roots through soil, touching every human psyker, every astropath, every sanctioned and unsanctioned wielder of psychic power. They feel him in their minds, not controlling them, not quite, but present, always present. A pressure at the back of their thoughts, a weight on their souls that reminds them constantly that they are seen, known, judged. The Astronomicon no longer simply guides. It compels. Ships in the warp find their courses correcting automatically, pulled along optimal routes whether their navigators will it or not. The Imperium's vessels move with a coordination that was impossible before, arriving precisely when and where they are needed, as though choreographed by an intelligence that sees every piece on the board simultaneously. The demonic incursions that have plagued humanity for millennia begin to falter. Warp rifts close as the Emperor's will presses against them, forcing reality back into structure. Demon worlds at the edge of the Eye of Terror find themselves under siege not by armies, but by simple existence. the Emperor's presence in the warp making it impossible for chaos to maintain its grip on physical reality. The Imperium becomes efficient. Brutally, terrifyingly efficient. Corruption is identified and purged within hours of emerging, not through inquisitorial investigation, but through the Emperor's omniscient gaze. Traitors find themselves exposed before they can act. Heretics discover their thoughts known before they speak them aloud. Order. Perfect, absolute order. And humanity begins to understand the cost. Voke stands in the empty sanctum 3 months after the awakening, staring at the golden throne. The mechanisms have been powered down. The psychic sacrifice ended. No more black ships arriving with their cargo of condemned souls. No more screaming as psychers are fed into dying machinery. That particular horror, at least, has ended. But he wonders if what has replaced it is better or worse. The Emperor now sits in a newly constructed chamber at the heart of the Imperial Palace. Not a throne, but a simple stone seat from which he extends his consciousness across the galaxy. He does not need machinery anymore. He does not need sacrifice. He has become powerful enough to sustain himself through sheer force of will, fed by the psychic resonance of quadrillions of humans whose faith has made him into something he never intended to be. A god. Voke has seen him 3 times since the awakening. Each time, those burning eyes have looked through him, seeing every secret, every fear, every moment of doubt or weakness or selfishness. There is no hiding from that gaze, no privacy, no inner self that remains untouched. The Emperor knows everything about everyone, and he uses that knowledge with perfect mechanical precision to optimize the Imperium's function. This is what they prayed for: a god to protect them, a father to guide them, a lord to impose order on the chaos of the galaxy. But the Emperor they have is not the father they needed. He is not the man who walked among his primarchs and spoke of dreams and possibilities. That man died, or was buried, under 10,000 years of suffering and worship. What woke from the golden throne is something greater and something less. Greater because he has power beyond comprehension, because he can hold the Imperium together through sheer force of divinity, because he can push back the darkness that has threatened to swallow humanity for millennia. Less because he is no longer human, because the weight of godhood has crushed whatever warmth and compassion might have remained after the heresy, because he sees humanity not as children to be loved, but as components to be optimized, pieces in a machine that must function efficiently or be replaced. The age of faith is over, Voke realizes. For 10,000 years, humanity worshipped a silent god who could be interpreted however they wished, whose will could be claimed by any priest or cardinal with sufficient conviction. That god could be loving or wrathful, merciful or cruel, distant or present, whatever the Imperium needed him to be in any given moment. But now the Emperor speaks. Now he acts. Now there is no interpretation, no debate, no theological flexibility. There is only his will, absolute, unavoidable, true. The age of absolute truth has begun. And truth, Voke is discovering, is far heavier than faith ever was. Faith allowed for hope, for the belief that tomorrow might be better, that prayers might be answered, that suffering had meaning. Truth offers no such comfort. Truth says that the Imperium will survive because the Emperor will not permit it to fail. That humanity will endure because their God will drag them through whatever horrors are necessary. That there is no hope, only inevitability. Voke turns away from the empty throne and walks slowly toward the exit. His mechadendrites hang limp, his augmetic systems running at minimum power. He feels tired in a way that has nothing to do with his physical body. They got what they prayed for, a god who will protect them from chaos, from Xenos, from the darkness between the stars. The Emperor is awake, and he is reshaping the Imperium into something that can survive the horrors of the 42nd millennium. But in the process, he is reshaping humanity itself, compressing free will into compliance, transforming choice into obedience, creating an empire that will function with mechanical perfection because its citizens are becoming less like people and more like well-maintained tools. Vogue passes a viewing port and stops, staring out at terror below. The planet gleams with lights. Billions of souls living, working, praying in the shadow of their awakened God. They are safer now than they have been in 10,000 years. The Emperor's presence has stabilized the warp around terror, pushed back corruption, ended a dozen brewing insurrections before they could begin. They should be celebrating, and some are. But Vogue sees the truth in the data streams, in the reports that cross his desk, in the eyes of the people he passes in the corridors. Humanity is becoming something else, something more stable and less alive, something that will survive, but only by surrendering the very things that made survival worthwhile. The Emperor has awakened, the Imperium is saved, and Vogue cannot shake the feeling that in saving humanity's body, they have lost its soul. He touches his hand to the viewing port, feeling the cold of the glass against his flesh and metal fingers, and whispers a prayer to a God who is no longer listening, because he is too busy ensuring that prayers are no longer necessary. What have we done? The question echoes in the empty corridor, and no one answers, because everyone already knows.